Hi, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the Achilles heel of the J30 series engines, which is the EGR valve and the IAC valve. These are two valves that are controlling two different aspects of the engine. One is controlling exhaust gas recirculation, and the other one is controlling idle air control. So idle air control, what happens is that the valve gets caked up with debris from the engine continuously running, and the valve can no longer open and close electronically. This is an electronic valve that's controlled by the ECU. How we go ahead and mitigate this issue or routinely service this issue to prevent issues with the idle air or the idling of the engine, if you will, is to clean this. It's a very basic part of the engine to get to. The only tricky part is that there's two coolant lines and an electronic connection that is controlling that valve, and then it's at the bottom of the throttle body. So we'll go ahead and take that apart, as well as do a throttle body cleaning, and the EGR, which is the exhaust gas recirculation valve, like I said, similar situation there. The valve gets choked up with debris from just continuous running, and you have to go in there and kind of a maintenance item, clean it out every so often. Now these two items can respectively fail because they are electronically controlled motorized valves, but it's more often than not a situation of cleaning them that will get you back on the road. So let's go ahead and show you how we take apart these two items and clean and service them and then reinstall them. It's a very basic video today. We're not going to go in depth a lot. We're just basically going to show you what these valves look like, how to go ahead and clean them with just basic brake cleaning and some nylon brushes, reinstall them, and then you too can get back on the road without having any engine service lights or any idle air or idle conditions. So welcome to the channel. If you're new, go ahead and subscribe, but let's go ahead and get started. Okay, welcome back to another video where we're cleaning up parts on the CL. So here's your EGR valve. This is a basic plug-in electronically operated EGR valve. As you can see here, we have two kind of orifices that we're going to be dealing with. This is a pretty basic part that you can go ahead and clean yourself. There's two bolts that hold this onto the end of the engine, which I'll go ahead and show you where this is located on the engine now. And on the bottom of it, this port and this port can get built up with carbon debris. Now I've gone ahead and taken some of it off here, but it was pretty severe. There is a gasket that holds this on, so you do want to get that gasket replaced. But it's fairly simple. You can use a can of brake parts cleaner and squirt it into the area, and then just take a nice nylon brush and agitate the first orifice, which is the bottom one here, and then go ahead and clean out the debris. And then you can just squirt in a bunch of brake cleaner into this one, and then let all the debris come out of that. And that's about basically it. So it's not very complicated to go ahead and do this. I would go ahead and recommend doing this probably every 50,000 miles, at least check on it, make sure that we don't have excessive buildup, and then just kind of work it around and make sure you get all the debris out of there so that you have a smooth operating EGR valve. Now some of the high performance applications call for the removal of this. We're not going to be removing this, we're just going to be cleaning it up and then reinstalling it. Okay, and here's where the EGR valve is located. It's I got two studs and two nuts that hold it on. Very basic. There is a gasket in between, as I mentioned, and all you have to do is scrape it off. Now I went ahead and whizzy-wheeled it down just so that we can get a nice clean surface there, as well as the other side of the EGR valve. So you can see that access is pretty easy for this part. You also want to take some light nylon brushes perhaps and clean up any buildup of carbon here and here. That'll make the flow of EGR gases. Okay, so we have our throttle body disconnected from the actual intake manifold. So we want to make sure that you clean the gasket surface. This is also a good time to check your butterfly valve for operation and sticking. I see that mine has some buildup in there, which we'll go ahead and address at the same time. Make sure that your cable tensioners here and pulleys are moving appropriately and smoothly. But we're going to focus on the IACV, or idle air control valve. To remove this, there's two coolant hoses that go through this. They're basically just feeding through to make sure that your throttle body doesn't stick during the cold winter months. But there's two screws that hold this on, and you want to make sure that you have a proper screwdriver, because these will strip out pretty easily. I decided to use an impact screwdriver just because it has the necessary torque that I want to apply without stripping it. So we'll go ahead and finish removing these two screws. And now this comes apart. And you can see that there is some buildup in there. This will likely cause issues where your idle will not be smooth because it won't operate smoothly with the valve opening and closing. There'll be a buildup of carbon in there. It's pretty simple. You basically have a gasket on this side that you'll need to pull out and replace. Absolutely have to replace. This gasket right here has been mashed down, and it's going to take a little bit of effort to get out. But essentially, you're just going to take a parts cleaner, your brake cleaner, and go ahead and use a nylon brush again to kind of build up or break down that buildup, shall I say, and give it a good shake, let it clear out some of that gunk that's in there, and then let it dry once you've cleaned it all out, and then reassemble. So that's pretty easy. Anybody can do this. Two screws, some hoses that go on the end of it, and then basically reassemble. So not a difficult job at all. Make sure that you are careful of the valve mechanism itself, not to damage that. And then clean up whatever you feel necessary to clean up based on your observations, and then you're good to go. Okay, we have our idle air control valve all cleaned up. We have the throttle body all cleaned up. Now it's time to go ahead and reassemble. Here's the part number for the gasket. Hopefully you guys can see that. I'll come in a little bit closer. There you go. There's the part number for the gasket for this. Okay, to go ahead and reassemble this, you just basically place the gasket backwards there, just like that. And go ahead and align your idle air control valve up, so it's like that. And then set your two screws in, and you're pretty much done at that point. Make sure we get a nice fit on this. said, just be careful not to strip the heads off the screws, and then you're done at that point. We'll just go ahead and clean this up before we reassemble. We're going to put the throttle body back on next. That is 22 Newton meters, or I believe 16 foot-pounds is what it converts to. I like to stick with Newton meters. It's a little bit easier. That's what the book actually goes by. And be careful when you're doing the throttle body. The gaskets are dependent upon the version of the car that you're working on. So the Type S model, which is what I have, uses this throttle body gasket, but they also make a non-Type S variant of this throttle body, which uses a different gasket. So double check, make sure you get the right gasket for your application. It's pretty simple. You basically put your gasket in between, make sure you have a nice clean surface. As you can see here, I made sure that we have a nice clean surface, cleaned out the throttle body plate, cleaned out the throttle body passages, and this end as well. So next is to put this on and then tidy up the rest.
Anywhere you go, you belong. Anywhere you say, anywhere.
Somehow the power steering pump cracked